This week on Aliens Explored, we have an intriguing mystery for you about supposedly the most perfect photo of a UFO ever taken, which disappeared and then reappeared 30 years later. The photo also captured a military jet shadowing the UFO, which the authorities deny all knowledge of. Added to that, we have a newspaper editor who refused to publish the photo, claiming that he had been served with a Defence Intelligence D notice forbidding publication, which the authorities also deny all knowledge of. And who took the photo anyway? Join us on Aliens Explored as we explore the mystery of the Calvine UFO. This episode is dedicated to our friend and explorer of the week, Israel. Israel has subscribed to our Patreon, which helps us to keep on doing what we do. Check out what's available on our Patreon at patreon.com/Aliens Explored.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Welcome back, listeners, to Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast where we look at modern day and historical UFO events, or UAP events as they are now called, and crop circles, personal favourite, and all sorts of other weird and wonderful things connected with extraterrestrial supernatural events. I am one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm your other host, Neil Kelly, and I'm just here for the weird stuff.
Is that what you normally call me? The weird stuff?
Yeah, the weird stuff. Yeah, I just like the weird things that people get into. You know? Never mind anything extraterrestrial or supernatural. You know, I want to know who's doing what to who.
You say weird. Many people say kinky, but yeah,
I say kinky too. Yeah, kinky. Fetishistic.
Moving very, very quickly on from there. How you doing anyway? It's been a little while since we've recorded one of these.
It isn't, because I've been on my holidays.
Yeah, your hollybobs.
Been off to Mallorca in the Mediterranean.
Majorca,
yeah, and spent the time sort of under palm trees and trying to keep to the shade as much as possible, apart from when I'm jumping in the pool or jumping off the cliff into the sea. Because it wasn't a beach, it's just a cliff, you know, and a ladder.
So lots of time to be spent watching the skies. Did you see anything unusual?
Well, I kept a lookout, but no, I didn't.
No. Okay.
I did see something when I was in the plane. I took a picture of it, but it turned out it was the moon. But it was really a nice pic.
Right.
But well, I didn't have a window seat, so I had to wait for the guy in the window seat to lean forward. And then I had a clear shot of the window.
So he leans forward and he hears this camera shutter going.
Yeah.
As he's showing his bum crack.
Yeah.
No doubt. Okay, fantastic.
His Dagenham cleavage.
Indeed. Oh, dear me. Well, a lot's been happening whilst you've been on holiday, and there's been some really interesting breaking news in the UFO community. Now, a lot of our listeners know that we record these episodes in advance, and at the moment we're about a month or just under a month in advance. Just about 3.5 weeks at the moment.
Well, let's just say we're recording this on the 15th of August, so whenever you're listening to it, we said all this stuff on the 15th of August.
We are, and it's only in the last week that today's topic has actually come out and come public knowledge. So we're recording it as much breaking news as we can. So apologies to our listeners if by the time this episode comes out, you're sick to death of hearing about this, because it will be covered a lot by a lot of people, I imagine. And of course, apologies to anyone who was looking forward to us talking about the 2013 National Press Conference. That is not the subject of today's episode, because, like I said, breaking news. We are, of course, talking about the Calvine UFO and its subsequent, the reappearance of the photograph that went missing many, many years ago. So the Calvine UFO, I'm sure we mentioned this on the episode before. It's certainly a very famous UFO case, particularly here in the UK.
Well, isn't it reckoned to be the clearest ever photo taken of a UFO?
It is, and this comes back to, you know, how people say, oh yeah, if you get so many UFO events, if there's so many flying saucers, how come nobody ever captures like a good image of it? Why is it always fuzzy and grainy, and why is there all this camera shake? Well, I think the Calvine UFO incident is a perfect example of why you never get to see perfectly clear images of UFOs, because of what happened with this particular one.
Now, this is a classic Men in Black story, isn't it? The government agencies stepping in and suppression and things going missing.
It really is. It properly is. But looking at the incident in itself first, before we come on to the photo, are you familiar with the Calvine UFO incident? Or were you? I know you did.
I wasn't. Obviously, I've looked it up. I've looked it up to see what we're going to talk about. But no, I wasn't. I wasn't aware of it. But when I read, the more I read, it was, oh yeah, well that's probably why I'm not familiar with it, because this picture was taken. It was. They're not. They can't even find the people who took the picture now, can they?
Their identity, that's the word I was searching for. Their identity has never been known, and it's never been disclosed.
But they didn't try and keep it a secret. I mean, what I read was that these people were working in a kitchen somewhere. They were chefs, and they decided to take a little walk to get some fresh air and cool down a bit, and take a little walk out in the wilds of Scotland. Is that what it said? Because I read that they were taking a break from their. Oh, maybe it was a longer break then.
It was a holiday.
But I read that they were a couple of chefs, and they were taking a walk out in the wilds of Scotland, and they heard this humming noise and looked around and saw this UFO. That they got this. You know, they hide in the bushes. They thought, well, they're coming for us. Better hide in the bushes, and they got I think there's about 6 pictures of it.
There were 6 pictures. This is going back to, well, this is the evening of the 4th of August, 1990. As you rightly say, it's in the Scottish Highlands. It's near a place called Calvine, which, is basically a lot of, I won't say wilderness because, you know, it's not that. Calvine itself is like a small hamlet, a little village. But it's out in the countryside of Scotland, and these 2 hikers. I'll be honest, I didn't know they were chefs. So clearly, you picked up something.
I read
there.
somewhere they were chefs. Yeah,
I do know their identity is withheld. It is very much withheld. And you're absolutely right. Yes, this humming noise. They turn around, and there is this absolutely huge diamond-shaped craft, just to quote Douglas Adams, hanging there in exactly the same way that bricks don't. And and they watch this thing, and over the course of about 10 minutes, it's just stationary there. Some jets come and go past it 5 or 6 times.
And that's another mystery, isn't it? Because they said it looked like a Harrier jet, And looking at this picture, it does look. It's got that sort of profile. I mean, it's very tiny and just an outline. But of course, the RAF denied that they had a Harrier jet in the sky at that time, so they can't track down the pilot. It's possibly a US Marine Corps Harrier jet. They were flying those at the time.
And this is, of course, close to the North Sea, so there's not an unreasonable aspect to that. But certainly it was denied at the time. However, there have been documentation that's come up very, very recently that suggests that there was a cover-up going on.
Yeah. Now they gave the photo to the Daily Record newspaper,
the Scottish Daily Record,
the Scottish Daily Record, who declined to publish it. Now there was talk of a D notice being slapped on it. This is when the men from the ministry turn up and shut you down.
Yes,
I was surprised to read that a D notice isn't compulsory. It's not an absolute shutdown. We're banning you from doing this, and you'll go to prison if you don't cease and desist. It's actually just a formal request for you to not to publish this information, and they decided not to.
Well, I mean, let's look at the Scottish Daily Record as a publication, and yes, and to be clear, the hikers didn't just give the photos to the Scottish Daily Record; they gave the negatives. So we're talking obviously pre-digital photography here. We're talking actual film. Yeah. And yes, they gave the actual film itself to the Scottish Daily Record. But yeah, if an organisation like the Scottish Daily Record do receive a D notice, of course, yes, they don't have to comply, but what are the consequences of them not doing?
Well, just ask Julian Assange what the consequences are for publishing something the government doesn't like.
Well, even on a more minor scale, every time the Scottish Daily Record would then come to the MOD for a quote or clarification on anything, or they obviously have to have a good working relationship with various government bodies, including the military. Yeah. And yeah, if they don't comply with the D notice, there is the possibility, of course, that the military might just tell them to sod off every time they came to them asking for anything.
But that could backfire in their faces as well, couldn't it? Because the MOD could decide, well, yeah, we don't like this publication. We've got the hump with them. So whenever they require any kind of clarification or something, or any verification of a story, we will just not comply. We'll tell them to piss off. But what's going to happen is they can then publish the most outlandish stories and go to the MOD, and then just the MOD decline to comment, thereby giving some sort of spurious credibility to the story.
Even worse, the MOD could be very selective about what they do and don't respond to.
Well, they always are anyway. Let's not kid ourselves. It's the MOD.
Yes, but ultimately, I mean, no, I'm of the belief that the Scottish Daily Record would want a good working relationship, and that in itself would be a reason to comply with the notices. However, this does seem, on the flip side of that, this does seem to be a really big story to just quash like that.
And I also would have thought, if I was a journalist on the Daily Record, and I was slapped with a D notice on the MOD, I'd be thinking, well, how else can I get this out there? Who can I slip this to?
Well,
deny all knowledge of it.
This is where, for me, it gets really, really weird. So the hikers have given the Scottish Daily Record the photographs and the negatives. Somebody from the Scottish Daily Record gave the photographs and the negatives to the MOD.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
It is the classic, the men in black turn up, isn't it? And they say, we know you've got a picture. We know you've got some photos and negatives. We want them, or else.
Yeah. I wouldn't put that past them at all.
And because there has been speculation, of course, that far from being an extraterrestrial vehicle, this was, as is often speculated when a UFO is spotted, this is some kind of prototype test aircraft being tested by the US military. And actually, the jets that they saw flying around it weren't shadowing it; they were actually escorting it.
That is one theory that has been put forward. However, we haven't said what happened. Like, so we've said about the hikers out walking. They hear the hum. They take, as you rightly say, 6 photographs. We know about the jets. What we haven't mentioned is how that particular encounter ended, which is essentially that eventually the, let's assume, Harriers flew off, and this thing hung there for a little while longer, and then suddenly it shoots up into the air vertically at an incredible speed.
And why would the Harriers fly off, whether they were escorting it or shadowing it? Because Harriers can hang in the air like the UFO was doing as well. That's the whole value of them, isn't it?
They can, but aren't they incredibly fuel intensive?
Yeah,
when they do that.
Yeah, possibly they ran out of fuel. Yeah,
it's more for takeoff and landing, isn't it? Vertical takeoff and landing.
Yeah,
VTOL. In fact, I've heard it called that.
But then because of the way because it's got these jets that rotate, that are on the side of the aircraft, so they rotate downwards to lift it up into the air, and then they turn horizontal to push the aircraft forward. But it's still not a supersonic aircraft by any means.
But can it do that at height?
As I understand it, yeah.
Okay.
As I understand it can hover in the air. That's how they came to the fore in the Falklands War, when they were up against supersonic aircraft, and apparently that was one of the tricks they could do by just suddenly stopping and going and going straight up. You know, they could.
Right. Okay.
They were
okay. I just imagine that being incredibly, just a good way to run out of fuel very quickly.
They would do. Yeah, I don't know this for sure, but I think what's happened is that the Harriers have largely been superseded by attack helicopters that are probably more fuel efficient.
I imagine so, and they can do all those things. So but no, it's a good question. Why even if they were intercepting this, let's say the local RAF bases got this ping of this massive UFO on its radar, and these Harriers are sent out to intercept it. Yeah, why would they just fly off? It does seem a bit strange. Now, of course, there is another possibility that there is a section of the governments, perhaps of the military, perhaps outside the military, who has access to such hardware as Harrier jump jets, who perhaps we don't even know about, who were escorting it, but not from America.
You mean in private hands?
I'm thinking basically, Men in Black type scenarios.
Well, I would imagine most of the, for instance, the company that builds Harrier jets, they would have access to them, wouldn't they? The ones that they haven't quite yet passed on to the military yet, unsold.
They would, but if there was a shadowy section of government, let's say. I don't know. I'm purely speculating there. Anyway, following the track of these stories, then yes, it comes into the MOD's hands, and it is sent for analysis at the Joint Air Reconnaissance and Intelligence Centre. Now, I'm given to understand that, and you're in a better position to know than me, having been an intelligence analyst. I believe they're the people who are the experts at studying photographic material and things like that. JARIC, I think is the...
JARIC, yeah. I don't know too much about that. I mean, I certainly remember at the time of the Iraq War, when America and allies were getting ready to invade Iraq, and they showed these photos, satellite photos taken, which they purported showed chemical weapons producing facilities. And what became very apparent was that with these satellite photos, a layperson can't make out anything from them. That you basically need the expert to tell you, oh, that's this and this is this, because of, that's how they recognise it. But now, of course, it wasn't that. They can just tell you anything they like because you don't know any different. But this was a clear photo, wasn't it? Clear as day, a large photo of this strange diamond-shaped craft or flying saucer craft.
Well, it's interesting you say about it being clear. So there are out there in the public an awful lot of mock-ups of it, recreations of it. I've seen a copy of the original is held under some very, very strict copyright, but you can see it if you go to the uapmedia.uk website. They're the people. It's actually being held in Sheffield Hallam University in their archives. The resolution's not all that clear. It is quite clear, but it's not amazingly clear, I wouldn't say. It's a great photo. Please don't misunderstand me here. But there's not much colour to it. It's quite washed out. It's quite grainy because of the daylight. I mean, this was taken at 9 p.m. at night. So, okay, August the 4th, you're still in daylight.
In Scotland, you're definitely in daylight. You're still in daylight at midnight that time of year.
But, well, I mean, light certainly would have been dropping, and, it gets quite cloudy up there and what have you. So, yeah, it is, light is not ideal for taking it. So the photo itself is a little bit on the grainy side. So, yeah, I would say it's not, I mean, to my eyes, I wouldn't have been able to pick out, that's a Harrier jump jet. But, there are people like at this Jarek who are experts in doing these things who would.
I mean, I'm not an expert either, but
say.
And certainly, all I could see was if someone hadn't said, "Oh, that's a Harrier," I wouldn't have known. But when someone, it is like that suggestibility with these kinds of photos. Someone says, "Oh, that's a Harrier," and I said, "Well, yeah, I can see that."
Oh, yes, you can see it once you've been told. Absolutely. Yeah. So, to help you out, Neil, I've just sent you a link to where that photo is displayed. Can you see that there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really grainy photo, but I've seen a much better one. Or is that
would have been a mock-up?
It's a mock-up. So,
yeah.
Right, so far from being... So if this is... So this says it's a line drawing of one of the Calvine photographs created for imagery analysis.
Oh, is that what I've sent you?
Yeah. So it looks like a really grainy photo.
Oh, scroll further down.
Scroll further down.
So yes,
there's a picture of a Harrier.
Keep going down.
Oh yeah, got it.
Yeah,
got it.
There we go.
Now again, it looks almost a sepia tone photo. It looks like from a.
That's what I mean. The colours
film
quite
from
washed
1920.
out of it.
Yeah,
I think because of the time of day and because of the cloud cover. And you see what I mean about it. It's got that visual noise, they call it.
Yeah.
But it's a great photo. And I'm not
It's a great photo,
at all. But yeah, when you see these crisp, clear 4K image, no, they're mock-ups of it. And there have been a lot of mock-ups of this photo over the years where once it disappeared, people were describing what it looked like and people were recreating it. But of course, it was never the original, and it's the original that's that we see. Now, the craft itself has been estimated with its size I'm assuming in comparison to the Harrier, because that's the only thing really you've got any frame of reference for. But it's estimated to be about 100 foot long, which is 31 meters for those who work in meters. I mean, that's a huge craft.
Is it? I mean, how long's a medium-sized passenger jet?
I don't know.
That's probably about that sort of length as well.
737?
Yeah, 737.
I'm looking this up as we speak. How long is a 737? It's 94 foot.
Okay, so it's a bit longer than.
So it's a little bit longer than a 737.
And it's round rather than long and thin.
It's certainly it's deeper or taller.
Yeah.
So where we're saying diamond shape, now if you said to me diamond shape, I'd picture it more of a vertical, sort of taller than it is wide, but this is wider than it is tall.
This is a classic flying saucer shape. Now, I remember some time ago we spoke to Barry about developing futuristic craft, military aircraft, and I do wonder about why they're going for the flying saucer shape. I mean, he spoke about the difficulty of having aircraft that have no tail fin, and the justification for having no tail fin is to reduce the radar profile. So you are almost left with something fairly disc shaped, but I'm still wondering, did people get the idea from science fiction? Oh, let's try and make an aircraft that's disc shaped because that's what the future looks like, or did someone realise that actually disc shaped would actually be a more efficient kind of aircraft?
Sightings came first. People were seeing flying discs, and then that was picked up by Hollywood and science fiction.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, the military, if they're trying to develop that, is it because they think, oh yeah, that's what futuristic craft is supposed to look like, or someone has actually worked out that, yeah, that's actually far more efficient.
There's a thing, isn't there, called it's basically like convergent evolution, where everything works towards being the most efficient possible, and it could very easily be a simple. It's a bit like you'll remember as well as I do, Neil. You go back 30 years, and cars, you could instantly tell the make of a car by its general outline. If it was a square, it was a Volvo. Yeah. If it was, a bubble car, it was a Volkswagen. Yeah. All that kind of thing.
The Ford Capri, the Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah.
All very, very distinctive shapes. And then it shifted quite a lot until about 20 years ago, when the only cars that were distinctive were either the most expensive cars or the very cheapest cars. And now we've hit this point whereby, cars they all look like each other now.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. You can't tell the make of a car just from its outline anymore.
No, I mean, and of course they keep changing it. Every year there'll be a new model. So,
There's that, but there is, because of a lot of aerodynamics come into play and things like that, they're all moving towards the same efficient shape. So it could well be the exact same thing as what you're saying there with why aircraft developers are moving towards this flying saucer shape. It's because that is the most efficient way. But the interesting one about this Calvine photo is it's not rounded, it's angular. Everything's angular on it. And it's got sharp angular edges. And it also does have a small tail fin. A very, very small one. On one end, as you look at the photo on the right-hand side, there is a tiny little tail fin.
So it's almost like a large Flash Gordon type craft.
So do you know what that's? Yeah, the rocket ship.
Yeah,
it's very much got that styling to it, and it also doesn't look to be designed to go vertical suddenly at high speed. But it did.
Unless it can flip, unless it changes.
There was nothing, and I say about, some documents have come to light with this photograph. The original witness statement is one of them. There was no mention about the craft changing, direction or
it just
pointing
went
upwards. Just suddenly went up at high speed. Now, it's not to say it didn't. It might have been left out or just, when people give witness statements, they often expect the obvious things to be exactly that, obvious. But I do find the fact it wasn't mentioned, I find that interesting.
I guess, it's the difference. Like, if a helicopter suddenly needs to go straight up, it just goes straight. It doesn't point itself up. It just goes straight up because its propulsion unit will lift it that way. Whereas a jet aircraft, if it wants to go straight up, has to actually point its way up.
Yes, it's got to bank upwards.
Yeah.
First. Yeah.
So it didn't do that. It just went up like a helicopter rather than like a jet plane.
Absolutely. Now, I'm very conscious, Neil, we've come to the end of our time for this episode. We haven't even mentioned the reappearance of the photograph. So what we're going to do, this is going to be a 2-part episode, listeners. So make sure you are joining us next time where we discuss this in even more depth and we talk about the strange reappearance of the photo.
And as a special treat for you, enter Nick Pope into the story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be...
Do you know what? Yeah, he was going to have to come up at some point, wasn't he, in this story? Yes, we will definitely be talking about Nick Pope as well. But yeah, so join us next time for that. In the meantime, keep watching all those photos, whether they are grainy, blurry, shaky, or crystal clear. And of course, keep watching the skies.
And if the MOD come and slap a D notice on you, best probably to comply.
Catch you next time. That is a good idea.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit us on aliensexplored.com.